Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's session. Um, Today we have Alpa from the UK with us, who will do a session on Azure Data Factory. So thank you for joining. Before we give the stage to Alpa, we have a small service announcement. Unfortunately, during the ongoing pandemic and situation, Cloud Brew this year, we will have to postpone it to next year. We already managed to fix the date, so Cloud Brew in 2022 will happen on 18th and 19th of November. Of course, this all depends on the ongoing situation, but be sure to already block the date in your agenda. Of course, Azure would not be possible by our partners. So thank you for your ongoing commitment to sponsor us and to be partners for our community. So thank you. With that said, I'm happy to give the stage to Alpa, and good luck and thanks again for joining today.
Thank you. Hi all. Thank you and welcome to my session, a case study, data movement and transformation using Azure Data Factory here at Azure User Group Belgium. So purpose of this session is to provide you overview of Azure Data Factory with a case study so you can apply this idea into your business use case. Also, I'm going to give you a link end of the demo, end of this session, which is related to GitHub repo. And there is one more link which you can use to create your Azure resources by just one click away for related to this demo. So stay tuned with me. Uh, Myself, I'm Alpa Buddhabhatti and I'm working as an Azure consultant at Cluster Reply. Cluster Reply is nice place to work with grow your career. I have added here my LinkedIn information. So if anyone have any question now or later on, they can contact me via LinkedIn. And generally, I do reply within 24 hours. So yeah, let's start with today's agenda. So today's agenda is divided into three main parts. In first part, I'm going to give you an overview of Azure Data Factory. In next part, I'm going to provide you a small case study which help you and show you how to move and transfer data. And in third part, I'm going to give you overview of DevOps for ADF, which is very quick and very simple. So let's start with Azure Data Factory. So what is Azure Data Factory? Azure Data Factory is a cloud-based data integration service that orchestrates and automates movement and transformation of your data. It also a platform as a service and it's a serverless. So you don't need to worry about infrastructure at all. Azure cloud provider will do it for you. And as it's a serverless and PaaS service, it only charges when you consume it. So like for example, your pipeline or activity execute, then you will get a charge for execution. Otherwise, you won't get any charge for components of or ADF. But you only get charge for a storage, which is very small amount of charge. Also, it's a low code or no code solution. So you can very easily create your business outcome very quickly at a production level. So that we can see later on. And we can create this pipeline in a UI without writing a code. So let's start with key components of Azure Data Factory. So first one is linked service. So this is similar to the other components. Like for example, SSIS, you can see they have a connection manager. And in a SQL Server or other database server, they have a connection string. And in C# or similar language, they also have a connection string of a storage. So link service hold a connection string. It authorize a particular data source. So it can be used by other component in a Azure Data Factory. So first of all, we create a link service in a ADF for a pipeline. Next one, we do a creation of a data sets. So we create a data sets, and data sets is a metadata about your data. So for example, if your link service is connected with a Azure SQL database, so it has a Azure SQL database related information. So in that case, data sets is like a table data, it's structure of a table. So it hold the table, and if your link service is pointing to the blob storage, then your datasets is related to a file or a folder. So that is a datasets. Third one is the activities. Activities is a particular task. For example, copy activity in Azure Data Factory, copy your data from one source to another source. For Azure Databricks activity will help, and you can run your notebooks in Azure Data Factory. If your activity is like, and you can also run like machine learning activities, for each loop activity, and there are so many activities available, and they do a particular task in a Azure Data Factory pipeline. So that is a activities. Fourth one is a pipelines. So pipeline is a collection of a logical group of your activities, and they do a specific task. So that is called a pipeline. And fifth one is a triggers. So once you have ready your pipeline, you can trigger it by a various different way. We can see that in a later on this session. So these are the main five components of a Azure Data Factory. So let's start with data movements. So you can move your data from one data source to another data source using the copy activity or copy data tool. And you can see that you are using lot of different data sources. For example, you can use other cloud services such as AWS and Google Cloud. You can use on-premise systems such as SQL Server, Oracle Database. You can use Salesforce CRM 365. You can use a serverless or other custom activities like Azure Function, HTTP call, web call, or REST API, and you can use a SFTP. So there are many sources available. So these are few of them you can use to move a data from one data source to another data source. And there are more than 100 data sources available in Azure Data Factory, and based on that you can move your data from one source to another source. So here I'm providing you a link which help you to know which data source you can use as a sink or as a source or both of them, because all 100 data sources are not used for both side. Either you can use as a source or you can use as a sink. So you can get more information on that link. So this is a data movements. Let's move into data transformation. So in ADF, you can do data transformation using a mapping data flow. And mapping data flow is use Azure Databricks. So behind the scene, it uses Spark cluster. So without writing any code in a Scala, Java, or Python, you still can use same features using the mapping data flow without writing any code. It's like no code or no code. So let's see what you can do here. So like you can use a transformation. You can use mapping data flow for a transformation, and you can use various different sources. So mainly these five different sources you can use, and there are other more as well. So you can use this data source as a source, and you can use as a sink as well. So there are around 12 data sources available which you can use as a part of a sink or as a part of the source or both of them. So here is a link which help you to get ideas about which data sources you can use as a sink or as a source or both of them. So this way you use a data transformation. We use a mapping data flow for data transformation, and which is a very similar if you have a background of a SQL Server background and you familiar with the queries like union, join, and there are many different formats, window function and like that. Then that all you can do in here by UI. So without writing code, you just use a UI for that. So that is a data transformation. So now let's move into what can we do in Azure Data Factory. So we can create as we know now that we can create so many, there are 5 components. So we create those components in Azure Data Factory. So when you use that components, you create that components, you are not writing any code. You just drag and drop those components and you set some properties. But when you create those components, behind the scene, Azure Data Factory generates a JSON code, which is ready for your source control. So it's a JSON code, but you don't need to worry about code at all. It generates automatically for a source control purpose. Also, you can use a Git integration using a UI, and that at the moment we have a two inbuilt integration, which is a DevOps Git and GitHub. These two you can use as a repository to deploy using the CI/CD pipeline. You can also monitor your ADF component in Azure Data Factory. You can manage your Azure Data Factory component using a Azure Data Factory UI without writing any code. Also, you can trigger your pipelines. You can trigger your pipelines in a specific time, like end of the day or start of the day or any particular time. So when you set that trigger, it will trigger on that particular time and it's execute your pipeline. Also, you can trigger your pipeline based on a file creation in your blob storage or file delete from your blob storage. So for example, file create in blob storage created, then at that time pipeline will triggered and it execute that particular Azure Data Factory pipelines. One more thing is you can use a custom activities to trigger your pipelines. So you can use Azure function, or you can use Azure Logic Apps, you can use Azure PowerShell, and you can use a C Sharp code. And I think there are a few more languages. If you know, then you can use write your code there, and you can trigger your Azure Data Factory pipelines. So these are the main These are the main things which you can do in Azure Data Factory. So let's start with how Azure Data Factory works. So for that, let's imagine that we have a scenarios to move a data or a file from REST API to a Azure SQL Server. So here you can see that my source is a REST API and my sink or destination is Azure SQL Server, and I'm using the activity or task which is move a data or move a file. So it's copy activity. So for that, I need to go to Azure Data Factory UI and I need to create link services for a source and a sink. So this is my source, which is a REST API, and this is my sink, which is Azure SQL Server. So I have now created my link service as a source link service, and it's pointing to a REST API. So it has the information about which REST API we need to call and how to call it, with which user authentication information used, like username and password. So this is my source link service, and this is my sink link services. So in this link service, I have information regarding SQL Server, like which SQL Server I'm going to call, which database I'm going to call, and based on which user information, like login information. So these all will set in our source and sink link services. So first, we need to create these two link services, and it has all information for a connection to your source and sink data source. So once we have a link service ready, we can create a data sets. And data sets, you can know now that for source side, my data set is a REST API. So my data set is a structure of a JSON. So here my source data set is a structure of a JSON. And my sink side, my data set is a form of the table because my link service is a Azure SQL Server. So by now I have ready link service both side, and I have ready data sets from source and sync sites. So now I need to perform a task, and for that I need a pipeline, and pipeline with a activity. So you can see that in my sorry, in my pipeline I have a copy activity which actually move a JSON code and insert into Azure SQL database, which is batch insertion. So this is my pipeline. So I have ready my pipeline. As I said you that it's a serverless, so we don't need to worry about compute infrastructure. So for that, Azure Data Factory have a integration runtime. There are mainly three integration runtime, but this is a default one, which is auto resolve integration runtime. If your source and sync both are in a cloud public place, then you can use a integration runtime. If one of them in on premise, or they use a private network, or like that situation, then you can use a self-hosted integration runtime or managed integration runtime. And if you have a SSIS package, then you can use SSIS integration runtime. So these are the integration runtime which take care about your infrastructure, and these happen into Azure Data Factory. So Azure Data Factory can have a more than one integration runtime, and it can have a more than one pipelines. So if we compare this situation with a traditional parcel delivery service, then you can compare your Azure Data Factory is a central place of a parcel delivery service who actually manage the delivery. So this way Azure Data Factory works. So now let's move into case study. So which is a second part. So here this is my scenario. So in my scenario, we are moving the data files from Azure Blob Storage to a Azure Data Lake Gen 2. Then later on, we do transformation and we store a result in our Data Lake Gen 2 or Azure SQL Server. So for that, I need these all resources. Like need to create resource group, and then need to create data factory, and then data lake gen 2, then blob storage, Azure SQL Server, and Azure Key Vault for a security purpose. So these are the basic scenarios. So when initially client came and they said that they have a lot of business outcomes. So for that, and they say that they will place a file into input blob container, and then copy activity should move those file into a data lake gen 2 and in a staging container. So I have a three container. This is my blob storage, this is my data lake gen 2 which is a staging container, and this is my data lake gen 2 but it's a final container. So like it's follow the standard as well, naming standard. So like for input file, input container should have a dash in for, and it's a prefix with spec code, business outcome number. And for staging container, it's have a dash staging and the prefix is with a spec code. And in a final container, destination container in data lake gen 2, it's have a only the spec code, which is a business outcome number. So they provided three business outcome. So this is my first business outcome. So that's why its name is business outcome BO001 days in. Here is BO001 days staging, and here is original spec code. So it's like BO001. So this business outcome is specifically related to movie data files. So like here in this blob container, they have a files which is related to one business outcome, and which is the movie data files related. They have another business outcome which is follow the same standard as well, naming standard, just a business outcome different number. And they have a files related to magazines membership related data. And they have a third one, and membership data related. So even in future, if they have a more than three business outcome, then their pipeline should work based on a spec code. So that's what basic requirement, that one pipeline should work based on a different spec codes and different files, at least for a moving data transformation. They need a different transform mapping data flow based on the requirements, but at least for moving the file, one pipeline should do move from a source to sink for all business outcome. So this is the original scenarios. So here is high level flow that we have a source file which come into blob storage. Blob storage have a source file, and then data movement pipeline will execute, and it will move a file into a Azure Data Lake Gen 2 in a staging container. And then from here, file will pick by data transformation pipeline, and it will move a file into a Azure SQL Server or a data lake gen 2 in a original spec code. So let's move into a demo in a portal. So for that, here is my resource group. This is my resource group. And in my resource group, you can see that I have a total 6 resource group. So I have Azure Data Factory, Key Vaults, one storage account, and one data lake gen, and uh, SQL Server and SQL Database. So let's start with a Key Vaults. So I have already opened here. So this is Azure. This is Azure Key Vaults, and these Key Vaults hold secret for my data source. So as you can see here, I have a 3 different data source. I have a one data source related to blob storage, one data source related to Azure Data Lake Gen 2, and one is related to Azure SQL Database. So I have a 3 different data source, and I would like to store its connection string in a secure way. So for that, I have used a Azure Key Vault, and Azure Key Vault hold the secrets. So you can see that I have a these three main connection string, and which is pointing to the correct data source. So this one is my data source, which is related to a blob storage, and this one is for Azure Data Lake Gen 2, and this one is a Azure SQL Server. So it's a very simple. You just copy your secrets or connection string from your, for example, here. Um, so this is my blob storage, and for example, I can have a access key here, and I just need to copy my access key from here, and then I can use that one into key vaults. So that is a very simple. You can just add here your secrets. Here you specify your name, and you can paste your secret here. So that way you create your secrets. So I have created 3 different secrets here, and once you have a secret creation, you need to do one more thing, which is the access policy. So you have to have add your Azure Data Factory, so Azure Data Factory can access this secret, and that is very simple. You can just select here secrets, yeah, secrets manager, and you need to type here your Azure Data Factory. So once you select your Azure Data Factory, I already have it, but I'm still using that. This is my Azure Data Factory. So you just need to search your Azure Data Factory, and then you need to select it, and then you select here. Then it will automatically appears here, and then you just need to click on add. So by that step, you will get your Azure Data Factory in here, and once you save it, your Azure Data Factory can now have access of your Azure Key Vaults. So this is the Key Vault concept. So let's close this now. So let's move next one. It's a blob storage. So uh, this is my blob storage, and I have a container here. So at the moment, I have a one container which is movie in, and it has one file already. Okay, and this is my destination container. Let's once I run pipeline, you can see it. Let's move just a file. let's move file from here. So now in my data lake gen 2, I don't have any file in my any container, and in my blob storage I have a one file which is a movie. Here I have I have used very less data here for a demo purpose. So you can see this is my data, and it has 4 rows, and I'm using transformation for two things. First of all, you can see that my last column, which is address, it has all address in one column. So I would like to split them in 3 or 4 different columns based on a comma separation or a new line carriage return. So if it is new line, then also I would like to split them into separate column. So like address 1, address 2, and address 3 here. And also I have a, because in real time scenario I have a millions of data in this file, so I want to filter it before store into Azure SQL database because it's unnecessary costly. So I have added filter here, and I'm saying that I am only interested in the movie which is a comedy, and I'm only interested for a Pacific year. So for that I have used another transformation. I will show you in a later on in a mapping data flow. So this is my source file now, and this is my pipeline. But before that, let's start with my link service. So you can see that this is a manage tab in Azure Data Factory, and here you can see that I have a link service. So you can see that I have a total of 4 link service. One is a Key Vault link service, which hold the actual Key Vault. This is my Key Vault's information. Then I have a SQL Server related link service, which hold the connection sync for a SQL Server, as I said you earlier. And you can see that now it's connected with a Key Vault, and now it has a secrets from Key Vault. So here I'm not typing any name or password or anything. So it's very secure compared to typing like hard coding it here. And once you add this information here, like you select your integration runtime, and you either type connection sync or you can use from Azure Key Vaults. And once it's ready, you just need to click on test your connection. Once it's successfully connected, your connection link service is ready. So similarly, I have for data lake gen 2, and I have for a blob storage as well. So these are my link services. Also, you can see that here in this code that it's generate a JSON code without typing any single line of code. It will automatically generate a JSON code for my link service. I can delete link service by just clicking here, and I can see that who is using my link service. So these are the components which are related to my link services, and they are using my link service, the particular link service. So this is the link service. If you like to edit, you can create by just clicking here, and it's a very simple to create as well. So these are the link services. Let's move into now author tab. So here you can see that I have a pipelines. So these are the main pipeline or master pipeline, which has two child pipeline, which is a execution pipeline for loading and execution pipeline for transforming. And I have a data copy activity which move a data from a main container to Azure SQL Server. And these are very easy drag and drop, as I said earlier. So like for example, this is you can just drag and drop, and you can set here, so like which pipeline you want to invoke. So you just need to select that, and if they need a parameters, then you pass here parameters. So that it's very easy that way. And for example, there are so many activities, so you can use any activities by just drag and drop. So let's close this one. uh, discard changes, and now let's start with my first pipeline, which is in here, and it's a loading pipeline. So you either click here or you can directly click here. So this is my loading pipeline. So what loading pipeline do? It's move a file from my blob container to staging container. And here, uh, let's execute this one. So it's executing a pipeline and it's moving a file from movie dash in folder container and it's moving to Azure Data Factory 2. So if I have a more than one file, then also it will do. It will pass each file and then for each loop have a copy activity, and this copy activity move a file from a in container to a staging container. So it has successfully ran, and you can see here how many file available. It's one, and you can see here as well. So like which container is using. So it's using a movie dash in container and it has child items. So at the moment it has only one child item which is a movie db.csv and it's a kind of a file. So let's close this, and if you monitor here you can see that it succeeded and it's read one file with that bytes, and it read one file and it write one file. And you can see here more information regarding queuing and how long it will take as a transformation time. So these are the information you can see there. And let's see here in a blob container data lake gen 2 staging container. So this is a staging container, and if you notice this time, which is a 1 minute before, so you can see that it has successfully moved a file for my with the same data in a data lake gen 2. Okay, so that is a one thing. So now what happen if I move more than one file? So for that, let's go to more blob container, and let me add here one more file. So let me add one more file which is movie db2. So now my blob storage, this container has two files. So when I run this pipeline now, then it should move two files from my in container to a staging container in a Azure Data Lake Gen 2. So let's run one more time. I'm specifying here spec code. At the moment I'm passing movie. So it only interested in movie dash in container and it's only work for a movie dash staging container. So it's just executing it. So by end of this execution, you will see that two file from my movie in container, which is a movie db and movies db2 will be moved into my staging container here. So let's see how long it will take. It's look like it's done. So if you see now here, you will see it has a two files because it has two child items, and you also see here that it has a count equal to 2, and you can see that there are two copy activities. It's moved from into a data lake gen 2. So now if I see in a staging container and if I refresh this, you will see there are two files which move by copy activity, and you will see the timestamp as well, which is a latest one. It's like 1 minute back from now. So that way, so you can see that in my blob container I have only one spec code which is movie in. So let me add here another spec code which is business outcome 001. I'm creating it, and now I am adding here a new file. which is this one. I can add here more than one file, but I'm just adding one file in my second business outcome. So you can see that now I have a, I need to have a proper name. Okay, I have to give again container name business outcome 001 dash in. So this is my source container, which has to be match same like pattern, which is in one. And let me delete this one. And now I'm adding file here. I'm uploading file for that particular business outcome, and I'm just adding one file at the moment. Okay, so now I have a one file in my this business outcome and two file in my this movie in business outcome. So I have two business outcome at the moment. So if I run this one, what it be done? It will move create this container if it's not exist. So you can see that at the moment uh, here that new business outcome 002 is not exist here, but when I run my pipeline it will create that folder and it will move that file as well. So let's see here and let execute my pipeline again. uh, Business outcome 001. So here I'm not specifying it's a in container or staging container. I'm always use the main container name. So it's a business outcome 001. So now when my pipeline will run, it will move a file not from movie one, but it's move a file from business outcome 001. So, so you can see that it's have a business outcome related file, and let's close this, and you can see that it has a one file move from blob storage to a data legend 2. And when you go to here, there is a staging container. This one, this is data legend 2. So you can see at the moment they don't have a blob business bo001 dash in staging one. But if I refresh this, you will see that this container has automatically created from my pipeline, and it is automatically moved the file into this container rather than a moving container. So this way I can add here as many business outcome as possible with a different file name. Like it's not has to be CSV, it can be have a different format like JSON file as well. So you can have that way, and I can have here all different business outcome, and that pipeline will run and it will move a file based on spec code which you provide while triggering that pipeline. So that way it will work for all other business outcomes. If tomorrow they have more than 3 business outcome or 10, then it will this pipeline will work for all business outcome. uh, so this is my data movements pipeline, which is this one. So let's now move into transformation. Transformation is a very specific for your source file. If your source file is the same structure, then you can use it. But here my all business outcome, my source file will be a different, so I cannot use the same transformation for a all business outcome. So I have to create different business different transformation logic for each business outcome. So I have only created for movie one, but it based on the requirements we can create different transformation. So in this transformation, you can see that I have mapping data flow, which is very simple. You can do it like data flow, and you can directly drag and drop like that way. And then you will just set here settings for that, and you can provide the information what it's needed. Like for example, it's a parameter, so you can just if I remove this one, you don't need to remember exact name. You just like click here, it will automatically comes here. So that is my parameter, and I'm passing a value for these parameters, different parameters. So, and this is my mapping data flow. And if I run this map, let's discard changes for that. So if I run this pipeline, so here I'm providing a file name and spec code. So if I want to use same transformation, then I can give a different spec code. It's a business BO001 or BO003, whatever is. And uh, then here you can see that it will automatically parameterize because we're passing the parameters while calling this one in a setting. And now let's trigger this data flow, so which do that transformation which I have told you earlier in based on my source file. So this will take some time because it's using the data, as I said earlier, it's using the mapping data, it's using the Azure Database. So it takes some time to create a Spark cluster. So while it's doing that, let's visit here, which is a transformation. So this is my mapping data flow actually. And you can see that I am using the file from my blob container, uh, from my data lake gen to staging container, because my moving pipeline, like pipeline which move a file, it already have move a file from my in container to staging container on a data lake gen 2. So this I'm using a data lake gen 2 staging container. So this is my source data set, and you can see here, even though I'm passing a main container name, I'm concatenating here that's staging. So it's only look that particular pattern for that particular container for a spec code. And I'm providing a specific file name. So if I have more than one file, then I don't need to provide a file name. I can use like a star.csv or star dot or all file star.star or like that. So this is my data set, and that my data set is parameterized as well. So you can see that it has the two parameters, file name and spec code. So this is my source, and you can preview as well here. Let's preview by just providing here parameters. So my file name is let's pick file name from here. So this is my file name, and my spec code is a movie. You have noticed that here I am not using base or in a container. I'm just using original name. My data set will take care of that. So I'm not using any pre suffix for that. And here I'm again providing file name, and I'm providing the movie. My spec code and my spec code again here. These are the settings now. So now I can preview it. It takes some time, but you can see that it all data, like which kind of data I have in my source file. You can see it here. So once it's previewing it, let's see here. So this is the filter transformation. As I said earlier, I only interested the movie which is between the following years. And here I can add more information as well if my movie type equal comedy or action movie or any other movie. So this is the filter criteria, and you can easily edit by just using this expression, visual expression. And here you can use a parameter, or you can use a function, inbuilt function, or you can use a schema, which is your input schema. So you can see that you will get it here. And there are, it's very powerful. You can see so many functions available here. So this is my visual expression for a filter condition. Let's see what happened here. Yeah, so you can see that you visualize your data here, which is exactly same of my file in a data lake gen 2 here, which is this file, first file. So yeah, and you can do other setting as well, like you can visualize, you can change format as well, you can optimize as well, but my suggestion is to use a default one unless it's really needed. And you can, we have already seen preview, so you can preview for each and every components here. So like for example, you can preview for filter as well, and you can preview for derived column as well. So this is my derived column, and very easily I have edit here. It's like any components, you may be familiar of some of the components because they are very similar to a SQL syntax, but you don't need to type anything, but logically they are same. So you can see that it has join, split your data, if a record is exist or not, union, lookup, and there are so many. This derived column for a calculation column, and you can select, you can use aggregation, surrogates, pivots, and window functions, and you can flatten your data as well. If you have a complex JSON code, JSON data, then you can split into a column. That one also can possible. So this is my derived column, and you can see that my this filter now giving me a 3 records, and here you can see that I'm getting 4 records. So filter is filtering correctly based on what filter I have set here. And this is my derived transformation. Derived transformation is what it's doing, because my data can have a comma in address information like line number and postcode and city. They have only comma separated, or it can be a carriage written in new line as well. So this transformation, what is doing, is just converting the new line, carriage written or comma into a comma. So I have in one pattern one. So now my address is always in a comma separated rather than carriage written and comma separated. So this is my one transformation. Here you can refresh and you can see as well result, that how it does look uh, uh, after the execution. So sometimes it takes some time, but you can view easily here. So this is the one. Let's cancel this. So this is my one derived transformation, and now my another derived transformation. So here I'm actually splitting my records line by line. So like for example, my address is like let's see here. So if you see here, so this is the one. This is my address line number. So this is line number, comma, pavilion code, comma, postcode, comma, city. So you can see that here, first one is a line number, then street name, then um, so postcode and a city name. So this way it split my that particular column from here, and it giving value according to split. So it's split by comma separated, and then pass a value as a in order 1, 2, and 3 and 4. So this is my transformation for a splitting, address splitting. So you can see that now I have 13 columns here. So if you view here, so you will see the result as well. So while it's doing that, you will see that I have used a window function as well here. So I'm now aggregating that, because I'm doing average rating for that movie for those specific years. So I'm using that new column. I'm doing aggregation based on year. I'm group by based on year, and I'm aggregating using the average rating from there. So this is my aggregation function. So now in this sync, I will get only 2 records, 2 columns. But in this splitting, I will get everything in this sync. So let's see, is it, yeah, it's done. So here you can see that. I have now additional columns, which is address 1, address 2, address 3, address 4, which wasn't earlier, and it's giving me the correct information, line number, street name, postcode, and city name. You get here same information because in my data I have used the same address for all address, so that's the reason. So this way you can visualize as well. And let's visualize final one. While it's doing it, I'm just doing it here as well. Yeah, okay. It won't allow you to do all things. So okay. So there are few things are compulsory in data mapping, data flow. You should have a must have a source as well as a sink. You have to have source and sink in order to run your mapping data flow. Otherwise, it will complain. So this is my mapping data flow. While I'm waiting here. So what it will do? This one will save a file into blob storage. You can see that it's did rating as well, and its rating is um, year and average rating. So this final output and it's stored into my final container. And here this thing you will see all data. So let's see into staging for one container. Let's go to data lake gen 2, and this is a main container which is movie container, and output of transformation will move from staging to original container, like spec code name. So here, based on today's timestamp, let's refresh. So you can, there are two file has generated. Um, so yeah, you can see here that now it has address 1, address 2, address 3, address 4, and they are now providing incorrectly with comma separated one. And you can see that review as well. So you will see that this is the information. So let's move into here, and you can see this is my, you can have more than one sink. So here I have a two sink, and you can have more than one source as well. One source can be JSON and one can be CSV or different format. So this is the final output I'm storing into my data lake gen 2. So this is my mapping data flow. And let's move now into running final pipeline, which is this. So let's close this. And now let's run this final pipeline and see what it do. What it will do, it move a data and then it store into SQL Server. So we can check that data has moved into SQL Server or not. So let's run this pipeline. So I'm only interested into movie at the moment. So if you want to run same pipeline for different spec code or different input information, then you can trigger it easily. You can trigger for 3 times with different parameters. So you don't need to duplicate of your pipelines again and again. So it will take time. So let it execute. While let's go back to our slide. So let's see what left. So while it take time, I quickly finish this third part, which is Azure DevOps for a Azure Data Factory. So here you can see that what is a continuous integration and continuous delivery for a Azure Data Factory. So it's similar to how we have a continuous integration, which is a build pipeline. And that means it is a practice of testing each change made to your code base automatically and as soon as possible. So it's very good practice for any software development life cycle. And once you have a build pipeline, result of build pipeline will use in a release pipeline, and release pipeline will deploy your code into different environments like staging environments. For example, dev factory already have it, but you can release into test environment or sit environment or uat or pre-prod or whatever stage you have. So this is the CICD in general. In Azure Data Factory, when you said CICD Lifecycle in Azure Data Factory, that means we are deploying our data factory pipeline and data factory from one environment to another environment. And that one you can do it in a two way. You can do it by manually using import and export templates using Azure portal, or you can use a CICD pipeline. And if you use a CICD pipeline, then only and only one data factory connected with your repository, and rest of all other environments use a result of this repository, which is a dev repository. So here here you can see that in life cycle that I have a main four data factory: dev data factory, test data factory, QA data factory, and pro data factory. So my these three data factory is connected with a release pipeline, but my dev data factory is connected with a collaboration branch and repository. So you can see that I have a dev data factory. So if I want to do some new change, then I need to create a feature branch. And in feature branch, I apply my code and then I will create a pull request. And once pull request is approved, my code will goes into collaboration branch. So once you have your code in collaboration branch, you have to manually go to your dev factory and click on a publish button. Once you click on publish button, your code will go into, it will automatically generate ARM templates, and your code will go into ADF underscore publish branch. From here, you can use your build pipeline, and your build pipeline will create a build artifact, and these build artifacts used by a release mechanism to deploy into different environments. For you can see here I have added one links if you know more information regarding this. So let's move into here and see how long it's taking. It's still doing it. It will take time. So for that, while it's doing that, let me give you some more information. So for example, if you want to see what setting I would use. So like I have used the parameters for spec code, because earlier I said I have three different business outcome. So this is spec code I'm passing. So it's only looking for that particular business outcome. And here you can see that I have a copy activity, and here I'm passing the file name, which is item name I don't name, and which comes from for each loop. For each loop automatically pass a file name one by one, and this is my spec code again. So this is my source, this is my sink. You can see that it's a staging container. Here I have mapping information. I'm moving all data, so I haven't choose any mapping information, but you can choose as well. And so that is a setting. Similar setting for transformation, I don't have much setting, but I have parameters here, and I have provided default parameters here. Um, yeah, you can monitor as well. So let's move into monitor. So this is a monitor tab, and here you can monitor your each and every pipeline. You can see that you can monitor your pipeline, trigger, integration, runtime, data flow, and you can create alert and matrix as well, which send an email as well. And you can easily click here, for example, and you can easily redirect for each child pipeline. For example, if there is any child pipeline, then I think here they don't have it, but you can use it, and you can monitor data using the Google icons. Okay, so let's see what happened here. It's still executing. Yes, it's still doing. Oh, it's done. So what happened is, now it's output of this pipeline, transformation pipeline. It's storing the data into a Azure SQL database. So you can monitor it here. So it's storing into Azure SQL database, and it's read two rows. And here you can see, if you redirect, then you will see individual pipeline as well. So let's quickly look into table. So this is my database, and this is my table. And if I run this one, so you can see that it has added two row, which we saw earlier in transformation. So with that, I would like to finish this one, And with that, I would like to thank you for attending this session. And I would like to thank you for a user group as well for allowing me to present this session. And now I'm open with a question. As I promised earlier, I have a linked information here. So in this information link, you can see that I have already added this repository into Git repository in here, this demo. And I also have provided link. So using this link, you can create all resources by just one click away. Like for example, Key Vaults and Azure SQL Server and Azure Data Factory, and those all things you can create automatically by just clicking here. Go here and use that button. It will create all resources into your subscription. So yeah, thank you. Yeah,
Yeah, thank you, Alpa, for the great session and the good overview on everything of Data Factory. We do have a couple of questions. Let's. I see we have two on triggers, so let's start with the one of Sean. Sean is wondering if there is a possibility to trigger to have a trigger on data when the data has new changes. For example, not having that on a time base, but for example, if a file changes or anything like that.
yeah. So like for example, if your file is changed in a blob storage, then you can create triggers. Let's go to here in Data Factory. Yeah, so you can create triggers, and which is very easily you can create as well, and you can create based on a file created or deleted from a blob storage. And if you need a slightly different, or even in CosmoDB, if CosmoDB database, if some structure has changed in some data has changed, then also it can be triggered. But for that, sometimes we need to use trigger by using the different activities, I think. Let's that one. Yeah, so for that, sometimes if it's not possible, then we need to use a code in either C# or PowerShell or even Logic apps. But for blob storage and CosmoDB, and you certainly can do that. You can trigger your pipeline based on some data change or some file create or file deleted. Yeah.
Okay, great. And then we have another question from Peter.
Yeah.
So you've mentioned something about timer triggers, but
Yeah.
Peter has a deployment or an implementation where the client has Azure Data Factories in multiple locations and time zones.
Mm-hmm.
And he's wondering if, okay, they want to trigger that pipeline at Sunday to Monday at midnight. But
Mm-hmm.
of course, because they have different locations, they also have different time zone. And Peter is wondering, is that possible within the same pipeline or the same deployment? Or does he need multiple deployments or multiple pipelines?
I think they need a deployment, same deployment, but they need to modify a trigger. In like, for example, this is your one location in UK location, then you can modify your trigger. So like you have a four environment, then you need to modify trigger in four environments based on their time zone. So you need to do that manually by let's go to here. Uh, I don't remember I have trigger. Yeah, I have it, which is at the moment stop. But yeah, so like you need to change here time, or you can use UTC time as well. So here you can change time slot as well, different time slot if there is a general one for all environments. But if you want to see in particular that local time zone, then you need to create time just to update time for here for that pipeline for that environment. So if you have four pipelines, means one pipeline in four different environments, then you just need to edit triggers in all four environments, and you can set specific time for that local time zone.
Okay, thank you. And then to wrap up, I don't think there are more questions, but I had a question myself. So During the last part, you talked about the whole CI/CD pipeline, and you managed that after you go through the process in Azure DevOps, you need to do something manually within the Azure portal to publish that pipeline. So
Yeah.
I'm wondering if there's a way to interact with Azure Data Factory through APIs or to PowerShell to automate also that publishing process.
No, actually, it's at the moment we have like this is Azure Data Factory, and once my code is go into my collaboration branch, like this is my main
Hmm.
branch or collaboration branch. So I need to come into my that collaboration branch, and then I need to trigger publish button. I think this is my collaboration branch. So from here, I need to click on publish button here. So at the moment, this is the only way is possible, not by coding way. But
Okay.
Azure Data Factory team is already working on that. So you can use any Azure Data Factory as a repository for any environment, and you don't need to do manually click on publish button. So they are already working on this feedback.
Yeah, sounds
Yeah.
great. I think there were no more questions. So thank you again for joining and for giving this talk on Azure Data Factory. Very interesting. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks.